Welcome to today's session on private networks. I'm Hema Kadia from TeckNexus, and we are delighted to have Gyan and Paul joining us today from Ericsson. Ericsson recently won TeckNexus Award for Excellence in Private Network Deployments for Smart Factories. Before we begin our conversation, Gyan and Paul, I would appreciate if you can take a few minutes to introduce yourself, and then we can dive down into our conversation.
Paul, please start.
Sure. Yep. So I'm Paul Tess. I've been with Ericsson since 2010. In various capacities, I help roll out new technologies, mostly on the radio side. And for the past few years, I've been working with our Ericsson 5G Smart Factory as an advisor to help with Industry 4.0.
Yeah, Jan Diekmann with Ericsson since more than 26 years, meanwhile, in various roles. And over the last 5-6 years, I've been working with the starting proposition of private 5G networks towards various industries. Manufacturing was a starting point, working also in port automation with 5G. And I'm today working mainly in the partnership ecosystem space, where we gather partners around the 5G proposition to help our customers to better and easier monetize their networks.
Thank you, Paul and Gyan, for that introduction. Let's begin with our first question. How is Ericsson's private 5G helping improve operations in smart factories? And can you share us some insights, both from results perspective as well as challenges perspective, that you have addressed in such deployments?
Yeah, Jan, did you want to start with that one? I think.
Paul, you can directly dive into.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so when we started the factory, it was the very early days of private networks, and Ericsson had created two different products. One was a private network based on scaling down a macro deployment, including the core, and then another one which we had called Industry Connect, which was optimized for small deployments. So we actually deployed both. With Industry Connect, we used the US CBRS spectrum, which is unlicensed, and that helped us provide a lot of agility in terms of setting up our building management system and some really near-term, easy, low-hanging fruit kind of connectivity. At the same time, we also used our higher grade private network, which was based on millimeter wave. So at that time in the US, 5G spectrum was limited to millimeter wave. So the CBRS was really still 4G. And so for that one, I think we benefited a lot because that's also when COVID hit. So we built the factory, and right as we were launching, COVID hit. And as you know, in manufacturing, a lot of expertise comes from the equipment vendors. And so having them integrate and put up the system was an impediment. And so we actually benefited from being able to use 5G over millimeter wave with smartphones, because at the time that's what supported millimeter wave. And we had, augmented reality and things like that, which helped us be able to do things in spite of not being able to send experts from around the world to help us integrate. So that was actually a very lucky coincidence of being able to stand up a high-powered, high-bandwidth network at this time when it was super critical. So that was, not something we hope to ever have to repeat, but it was very useful and insightful in terms of how it can be helpful, right? So if you're building a new manufacturing plant, it can help you reduce travel. I mean, people still travel, but it does show that potential, and we benefited from that. I would say some of the challenges then were, as we went along, right after we stood up the factory and started manufacturing, it was still very difficult to get devices in millimeter wave, right? So I've worked closely with Jan because of that ecosystem partnership imperative to get more types of devices. And recently we've added mid-band because that overlap with what Europe and the rest of the world has expands the ecosystem for us tremendously. And so I think that's where we had a good lesson learned, but in spite of that, we still benefited a lot in our early days.
If I may add, Paul, I think one of the things that always impressed me when we talked about like how 5G is utilized in, let's say, our digital greenfield factory, was also the way people adopted the technology and worked like as really agile and eager teams, looking into how the technology can be used for different applications, etc. So that to me was opening um, one of the important aspects, that it's not only technology, but that the digitalization journey you did and you also supported big time, Paul, was also attributable to the mindset and the openness of people adopting these new technologies, which is not always a given.
Yeah, that was actually a good part of our journey is when we stood up the factory, we were trying to be very classical in terms of, planning for automation and hiring experts in different fields. So for example, surface mount assembly, you'd want someone who's, had on the resume 5 years of SMA experience, right? But it turns out that, well, first of all, that's a very difficult skill to get in Texas and in US because so much of that had been outsourced. And so, as Jan was pointing out, we've learned then to hire for the interest in technology. So we end up hiring for people that like to build their own gaming PCs and stuff like that, right? So you don't have industry manufacturing experience, but you have that interest in technology and the willingness to learn. And that actually helped us have people that were flexible. So as we changed job roles within the factory, most of our employees end up learning many, many different skills and stations. And our greatest actual attrition is from promotion within. So they move up into, repair or maintenance or automation. And so that's a great thing. And I think 5G is part of that because from the very start, we embraced Industry 4.0 and the willing to use technology to solve problems. So whenever anyone on the floor has problems, instead of saying, "Hey, that's just a process, just do it," we actually openly listen and find ideas. So if they want to use a camera to use AI to do some inspection, or have a smartphone enable them to enter data more efficiently, we embrace that. Right. So now we have lots of scanning where data entry is more easy. We want to superpower or create superhero capabilities for our people versus replacing them with machines, right? I think that mindset is pervasive in the factory. So yeah,
No,
it's a really good point, Jan, is how we emphasize technology helping people.
absolutely, absolutely. And this was going to be my follow-up question, continuation to the points that you mentioned. So, what are some of the manufacturing use cases which has benefited the most from private 5G network? We typically hear predictive maintenance, we hear autonomous robots, but I would like to understand just the examples that you gave, that you're giving opportunities to the team and how, as a part of your automation process. So, what are some of the use cases that benefited the most from the private
Yeah,
5G?
well, so we started off with the easier ones like building management system, like connecting sensors, right? Connectivity. And even when you think of probably the most, killer app use case in manufacturing is autonomous mobile robots, right? The AMRs, get missions from a fleet manager, and then they follow. Well, they don't follow a path precisely. They have a map, and then they're allowed to navigate themselves to that. So connecting that over 5G was helpful in terms of enabling more features. So working with the vendor to develop that. Um, I'd say the other things we benefited a lot from is as people have ideas for example, when we receive pallets on inbound shipping, we have to verify the size of the pallet because as the automated forklifts move them into the warehouse, we have to make sure it fits, right? So there's US size pallets and European size, and they're different heights. And so even verifying things like that is something that we didn't want to have a person do, right? Deploying a person, and so easing that was using AR glasses. So as someone's walking around, it's very easy for them to like quickly document the height of pallets. It's almost like part of just walking around the warehouse. So I think embracing ideas like that and allowing the team to experiment and having a wide variety of skill sets on the team in Industry 4.0 helps with that, right? So we had a guy who was really good at, writing software that could do, object recognition, but also the pose estimation, so we could get the measurements in. So it's things like that. What else? So we've used VR and AR to help with some training. So again, when we're hiring from outside of the industry, people that don't have surface mount assembly experience, for example, letting them experience that world while they're taking their training helps them get a context and they understand how their role and function fits within the bigger picture. And even if you think about final assembly, instead of saying, here, stand here, and screw these holes, screw these screws, they see what a radio looks like. They understand the context and the importance of their station and where they can change their jobs if they want to take an interest in that thing. So I think it really helps humanize it while adding just tons of technology. Everyone's super comfortable working beside a robot, which is amazing, right? Like it's an exciting place to be because there's always something new happening, and they're not afraid of it. People aren't going, oh, now you've introduced a robot and that takes away my job. They're like, wow, this is so cool. Now I can do this other thing, right? So
Great.
I think that's a great thing about
Now,
working in the factory.
now, Paul, that you have given the real life examples, I mean, I wanted to answer that question, unfortunately, with a little bit. It depends. So, as we hear also from Paul and our factories, there is not the single killer use case, if you wish, because the value always depends on the importance of the application for the whole production process. And that varies from vertical to vertical, even within manufacturers doing the same kind of manufacturing, right? So I think we can distinguish between highly intrusive or least intrusive. What Paul mentioned with the building management system, I think is least intrusive to the production process, but highly valuable, of course. We've seen examples, for instance, of car manufacturers who went a highly intrusive step, bringing the 5G into the core of their car production process, making or transforming in an innovative way assembly steps to be on the move, right? And and that is highly intrusive. It's one use case that provides tremendous value because it gave them an extreme increase in efficiency. At the same time, you can have like applications like workers with tablets being seamlessly and always connected, same as AMRs, for instance, which we have in a published warehouse case, where the value is in the great coverage and seamless connectivity, not so much into this highly demanding industrial safety applications. So it really differs, but I think again we have to see the 5G network as an innovation platform, and as Paul described, we heard that many times. Like once it's there, you will see applications being put on the platform by partially even or to a huge extent by the frontline workers.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Earlier, Paul and Gyan, you mentioned about the industry digitalization process, and you mentioned about the various technologies. So, what role do you see private 5G in enabling technologies such as AI, robotics, and edge computing in uh, in the overall Industry 4.0 digitalization process? And what advice would you give to the manufacturers to prepare themselves for 2025 and beyond as they move in this or they continue their journey towards industry digitalization?
Maybe I start here, Paul, if that's
Mhm,
okay.
mhm. Yep.
I think 5G can be seen as an enabler or accelerator of some new technologies. I mean, there are technologies that are skyrocketing at the moment, like industrial AI and machine learning, moving their way down to the edge more and more, at least on the inference side. Um, so we had a recent example together with Hitachi and AWS for quality control on via computer vision, which is also an AI-driven process, right? And I think here 5G provides connectivity, which is also bringing together the OT and the IT world by allowing to connect more devices from both sides and making them communicate via either means of a intercloud instance or directly to an OT system or a cloud, depending on the type of data. And in the future, as the 5G network capabilities evolve, as per 3GPP definition and implementation, 5G will support more and more of these advanced robotics applications, allowing more freedom and easier connectivity for highly demanding protocols that today only work on cables. Of course, there are always limits, but I think it will grab more and more space. And if my 2 cents on how should manufacturers prepare, I think most of the manufacturers do have sort of a digital agenda today, but I would just say think beyond limits, right? Or plan beyond limits that you see today. Um, don't say it will never work like this. Follow your digital path, your digital agenda, and start thinking what can I implement to improve my operations, to improve visibility of my processes, etc. I would like to mention we just released 3 papers on how 5G private networks are essential, like for autonomous things, how they can fire up industrial IoT and advanced analytics. So it's all on our website, Ericsson.com enterprises. So there is a lot to explore and a lot to do. But maybe Paul, you want to give your future outlook from our factory briefly.
Yeah, I mean, I think, just to dive down one layer deeper to what Jan was describing is, um, advances in AI are very, very steep, right? So, and what we're seeing is that enables inexpensive cameras to be used as sensors. And then it's all about connecting them to enable those things that you now suddenly can do, right, with cheap cameras. Um, and so there's a heavy uplink component that 5G can enable just because you can do your proof of concept with Wi-Fi and stuff, but when you want to scale to a factory, which is typically a very large space, you need that better connectivity to make sure you can scale to many AMRs. So autonomous mobile robots with cameras allow you to do a lot more than just carefully follow a path or um, use a simple lidar, right, for detecting if you're about to collide with something. If you have a camera, you can detect what it is that's in front of you and react accordingly. Or even the hard part isn't moving around with an AMR, it's docking, right? How do you dock to something? And so if you think of how autonomous cars are benefiting from cameras and being able to read lanes and stuff like that, inexpensively, right? Because even the lowest cars now have lane keeping and stuff. If you look at that applied to autonomous mobile robots and other robots, it does enable a lot more safety and rapid innovation. So it's really about how AI, right, has enabled Industry 4.0 to go way beyond what the traditional sensors gave you insights, right? Your digital twin now is now way more faithful than just representing states of processes, right? So I think that's super cool because it brings the human into the loop as well, because cameras can do pose estimation for people versus, hey, this machine is now in a certain state. That means a person is involved, but you have no idea what that person is doing. So we've embraced that, right? That was a key thing to be able to do without intruding on people's privacy. So I think, yeah, the technologies that are coming, with processing on the edge and stuff like that, is further enabled by 5G, just because the need to connect a lot of data with mobility is now, untethered.
One of the key focus areas for industries is sustainability. How is Ericsson's private 5G helping industries to reduce energy use as well as carbon emissions?
Well, well, I'll start with just our factory, and then Jan can expand because there's way more. I'd say in our factory, we haven't done a ton of sustainability stuff using 5G. We built the factory and the production lines and even our products with sustainability in mind to meet our objectives with carbon reduction. Um, but I'd say in terms of using 5G as part of that, we have our building management system and some sensors around, like making sure that the cardboard recycling is done properly. But we built it inherently as part of the building structure and our products. So I'd say we're a little weak in terms of embracing 5G to like make that a thing, or to strengthen it. And Jan, maybe you have other ideas from your other customers.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's hard to say this is how 5G gives you a better sustainability. 5G is part, and 5G is a glue of better visibility of your process and a higher efficiency, which could mean better quality, less scrap, less energy consumption. At the same time, of course, 5G can help to make uh, new ways of consuming energy possible by precisely and in real time monitoring the grid, your consumption, and the power mix when it comes to renewables, for instance. We should not forget there is private 5G in the factory, but you can also use public 5G networks as an innovation platform for the grid outside, right? And I think in general, as 5G helps the digitalization process and the better control and visibility over the emissions of any kind your products cause during the life cycle, um, you can employ that connectivity piece and the ability to measure and react in real time from basically from design through the whole life cycle process up to the customer, basically. Um, I I think it was 23. I had a keynote in Automate where I said like, how does 5G enable a leaner and cleaner production? And here lean means smart as a building block in it and leading to a less or a better sustainability throughout the whole process. So 5G is a worldwide innovation platform. It helps you in your production process, but you can employ one technology to track the footprint of your and improve the footprint of your products all along the way from cradle to grave, so to speak.
So, Paul and Gyan, what advice would you give to the manufacturers who are planning to start their private 5G journey? And what would be the key focus areas uh, during the initial startup process?
Yeah, it of course always depends um, where the manufacturer starts as such, right? In general, I would say it is important to have a sort of a digital agenda because that will determine what you would want to connect in the first place, what is your priorities in term, because it's not only connecting things, you have to work on your backend processes, you have to secure all the stakeholders buy-in for the whole digitalization process, not only for the 5G. But I would say it's about starting with simplicity and defining specific applications where you see today where 5G can help in your processes, where you have gaps, and also having, and I leave that also to Paul a little bit, establish a clear data architecture that can evolve as you go. It does not need to be carved in stone, but you need to have a plan what to do with the data that you acquire. And again, see it as an innovation platform. Give your people and your processes the freedom to use it. Paul, maybe I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Having the IT organization become familiar with how to use this new technology. So it's a little different than, let's say you had a device that had to be mobile, you would use Wi-Fi before. Now you have to add a SIM card or find a way to adapt it. But then, the superior connectivity of 5G, right? Like the RF is just so much more, able to penetrate and propagate that it solves some problems for them. So that's like the magic part that they'll enjoy, but they will need to figure out how to work with, 3GPP devices. They might, in some cases, have to work with an operator, right? Because it's licensed spectrum. So I'd say start with easy things like just pure connectivity of sensors and maybe AMRs, and then work your way up. So you need a fairly competent team to do the advanced use case that Jan described for the automaker, for example, as an intricate part of their process, right? If you need a large team of data experts to get down to the levels of latency um, that requires, right? But if you're purely doing connectivity type things, then it's more of a process of getting your IT people familiar. I'd say also security, right? So Jan mentioned architecture. Security is a hugely important part of manufacturing, and that's actually a beautiful part of private networks. Is the core and the data stay on-prem, and then you can do with it what you will. And there are different mechanisms for controlling security, like APNs, access point names, to help you create essentially sort of VLAN type structures um, to help manage your data. So I think it's having the IT teams learn all of these tools and how to work with it would be a first step.
Thank you. One last question. From your successful deployment of private 5G in the smart factories, both at your smart factories as well as your customer deployments, what are some of the learnings that can be applied to other industry verticals?
And maybe I start with a more
Yeah,
holistic
I
view.
think you'll
I
have a
think
bigger view.
I think actually manufacturing was the spearhead of utilizing or employing 5G as part of their Industry 4.0 digitalization journey. But meanwhile, we also see 5G playing a significant role in many, many other industries that you might not have thought of, like in mining, in ports. And it has become a trusted ingredient and technology for increasing flexibility and connecting things, but also in many industries for instance, for worker safety, because of the very good propagation and penetration of 5G technology that Paul mentioned before. I think the lessons learned is here. You can utilize that one platform for creating better visibility, getting better sets and more high quality sets of data from your processes, and then it's on you to use them, and you have a platform to immediately apply the findings back in sort of real time, whatever real time for that process in question might look like. I might mention that here we have designed a smart manufacturing maturity assessment for our customers that they can just use and participate in. And I think that's good to see where are you compared to others, anonymized, of course, on your journey, and where that will also determine like where 5G can help. And then you can apply talking to others, to peers, or even go to Ericsson and ask what have others done, or to our partners, and see where you can apply that within your processes. It's no magic. It's you can treat it as a natural part of your Industry 4.0 journey. And I leave the last word to Paul here for if you have something.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually a great suggestion, is to, take that survey to understand where you are in the map. And we have a lot of, literature available that helps you on that journey, right? In sample use cases and stuff like that. And yeah, I think if you don't treat it like magic, it's just another tool that helps you, extract value from AI and processing on the edge. Industry 4.0 is really taking off, and there's this whole thing of Industry 5.0 where we embrace the people aspects of it more. And 5G is a very natural part of that because it's all around the context of, safety and people. So 5G is really a great tool in that toolbox.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all the insights from your successful deployments as well as the implications for wider industries as they move on their journey for private 5G deployment. Thank you again.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.